So, what does it feel like to get 3 million views? So, there are a bunch of things that I wanted to talk to you
Of
about.
course.
I don't know if you prefer a particular order or you just want to jump right in there.
We
I
can
mean,
jump
I'm
right into it. Like, I'm sure the conversation will flow.
okay, sounds good. One of the first things that I wanted to ask you about is I'm really impressed with your TikTok account.
Okay. What? No one's ever said that to me before. What was so impressive about it to you?
Well, I think you have like thousands of likes. So I was just kind of curious as to how a really large number of likes. So, but I also noticed that you talk about other books besides your own books on your account.
Correct. Yeah.
And I was wondering whether there was a strategy, whether it's just the way you decided to do it, or just
So,
to get some idea.
yeah, and TikTok, just like other forms of social media that I'm on, it's very hard to know what will do well. So a
Right.
lot of the likes that I had gotten on TikTok were weird flukes. I
Hmm.
remember I was using a trending sound, which I think is a unique feature of TikTok. So it was a 6-second video, and it was some sort of trending sound where you're supposed to like race to your bookshelf, and so I did, and somehow that got like 3 million views. I don't understand. I think it's the stupidest thing I had ever filmed.
So just so I understand what you're saying, when you said a
Yeah.
trending sound, you literally mean just like a sound effect, basically.
Correct. So, and you'll have to potentially forgive my ignorance here because I actually stopped using TikTok a year ago based off of all
Okay.
of the data mining scheme that it turned
Hmm.
into.
Yeah.
But how TikTok operated was you could use the same song that other users were using. And so those songs or sound effects that were being used a lot, usually with like the past couple of weeks, were considered trending sounds.
Hmm.
And what would happen is the algorithm would actually say, if you like this song, you might like other videos using this sound. So people would start to use that trending sound.
Okay.
You could then, if you really liked something, you could then go and actually purposely search videos that were using that sound.
Hmm.
Sounds could be sound effects, they could be songs. A lot of songs gained popularity on TikTok that way because it would be the same blurb and people liked the concept because it was a
Hmm.
powerful bit of lyricy.
Right.
Instagram does also have some sort of trending sounds, but I'm starting to see a few of those actually show up in Reels and Instagram. So it's this tactic that you could use on other social media channels as well. TikTok was
Okay.
just unique in the way of how constant that algorithm was and at all the little nuances that it was looking for in order to actually serve content to you. And especially when I had joined TikTok a few years ago now, the earlier you get onto a platform, the more likely you are to be discovered by its user base
Hmm.
and to get that engagement because there's less
Right.
people there.
Right.
So the same thing will happen like with ebooks, right? Just the people who were the first Kindle authors,
Hmm.
they were able to make a lot more money as well
Right.
and gain a readership because Kindle only had so many subscribers. Now it's millions. So the
Hmm.
discoverability drops the larger a platform is.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that story.
It was kind of crazy, honestly. Especially because, like I said, it was a video that I wasn't really like. I didn't think it was anything fascinating. I did have other videos that did really well. Once, I subscribed to Wired, and so Wired had like a little article about what they believed space smelled like, and so I had attempted to use those scents. I think it was like a raspberry alcohol kind of scent is what astronauts have reported that to be. So I tried to make a cocktail so I could taste what space sound smelled like. That
Okay.
also did some views. Whereas like if people just like the weird things, right? Because I'm there as an author on the platform. I was there to market my stuff. And
Hmm.
most of my videos that were actually about my work didn't take off. It was everything else. So, but it's kind of always like shocking because you'll log into the app and you'll see all the notifications. You're just like, oh, okay. can I replicate this? Do I want to replicate it is also the other thing, because sometimes it can be very overwhelming. But then you feel good at the same time because you're like, oh, people like me.
Right. So as a fellow author, the one of the things you just said is that's the question I have, which is, did you see a bump in your sales? I mean, so you've got 3 million views. Okay, go ahead.
No, not from that video at all. There were other videos that I could tangentially say did bumps, and I say that because I never got involved in TikTok shops. So what would happen is I would post a video about my book, and then I would have to wait and see the sales reports come in. And I could never really tell because Amazon doesn't tell you what brought people to Amazon to buy that book.
Right.
Was it my social media? Were they just browsing Amazon's website? But I did have a few videos where I had talked about my own experiences, like dating, tied it to my romance book. And then sometimes I would see like an order or two come through after I had promoted that book. So that was nice, but it's very hard to do consistently. And I found that I never hit like the viral success with my books. People would be interested in, and I feel like a lot of people would save my books also to like maybe buy later. And I could see how many people would like bookmark my videos, but then I would have no idea, okay, well, did they go buy a copy a week later, a month later? Someone actually texted me on Blue Sky, or I think that what's the proper term, skeet. Someone skeeted me recently saying that they had read my book after it had been on the shelf for like a year. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
This stuff happens. Yeah.
Well, I've always suspected, because I agree with you about KDP. KDP doesn't tell you what countries the sales come from.
Correct.
Now, actually, ACX does. Are you familiar with ACX?
So, yes, but the only audiobooks I have been through like Findaway Voices, Spotify.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
So, and that is the reporting there is also pretty light.
Really? Because my audiobooks, I published them through ACX and Authors Republic.
Nice. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Authors Republic?
I've heard of it, but have not used them.
Okay. The only thing the positive thing about Authors Republic is it seems to be the most stable out of all of the other, what are they called, aggregators. So other than ACX, which is actually kind of limited, because as you know, with Findaway Voices, and I know Spotify bought them at one point, Authors Republic is the same way in the sense that my books are available on dozens of platforms. All over the world. And so that's what you get from like an alternative aggregator like Authors Republic, Findaway Voices, and Spotify. Now, the downside to me, you kind of piqued my interest when you said that the reporting isn't great, because that is the downside of Authors Republic. It's almost like a black box.
Yeah, a lot of reporting is like that. And that's why once you hit a certain scale as an author, it's recommended that you start to sell direct, because then you can see that data yourself, right? Because you're owning the store.
Right.
Anytime you're reporting on or relying on a store's report like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo or Draft Digital, any of those, you're really reliant on what they will give you.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating, because I did find with my my novel that I published in audiobook form, if I run keyword ads in the UK, because one of the voice actors is a UK voice actor. And so if I run ads in the UK, the book will sell. It's just that the amount of money I spend on the ads doesn't justify
I've tried
the sales that I get.
I've tried to do ads a few times, and they've never found them worth it for me.
Yeah.
My ROAS is always negative, which is not what you want. But I am probably in a unique position where I don't have a lot of read-throughs because I don't write a series. All of my books are standalones. And that's usually where you start to see like marketing start to pay off, is people buying book 1 and then buying book 2, 3, 4, 5, you know? And then it kind of, because then you only have to pay for that first book sale in terms of marketing spend. So I've never really found success for it. For me, maybe one day I'll write like a novel series, but that's not in my cards.
So I think this is a good point to give you the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about your writing and about how you came to writing, your attitude toward writing.
Sure. So I am primarily a short story writer. So a lot of my work is where I am one story in a anthology collection with anywhere from 15 to 20 other authors. I
Hmm.
do have my own collection, so I have 4 at this point, but then they are also small little bundles, usually about 100, 150 pages, so not quite novel lengths, novellas, I would say. I have 1
Hmm.
novel, that's it, that's a romance. I have not written one since, so we'll see if I ever write another one.
Uh,
Short stories are just kind of where I naturally fall into. I find it's very rare where I'm writing anything more than like 10,000 words. My sweet spot is probably between 3 and 5. So I tend to publish different types of content and in different places than I think a lot of other indie authors. I do a lot of fantasy, I do some sci-fi as well, and then contemporary stories. I am a queer writer, so I have a lot of queer folk in my stories. Not everyone, but a chunk of them.
hmm.
And like I mentioned, I'll have my own collections or I'll publish occasionally small stories just for free on my social media.
Okay. Yeah, because I noticed that on your Substack, you've published a bunch of short stories on your Substack. How do you feel that's doing? I mean, is it doing what you wanted it to do, or?
Yeah, so the goal of that had actually just been to give people an understanding of the type of stuff that I write. So
Mm,
it's a form of content marketing, right? And then the idea is
okay.
like, yes, these stories are being published for free, but that is not going to stop me from then turning around and publishing them on Amazon once I'm done writing the collection.
Hmm.
And the goal, of course, is going to have the stories that I'm publishing via my Substack, I will admit, are a little rough. They have been through edits, but I would like them to go through another round of edits before I actually put it together into a collection. So then there is something different between the free stories that you can read online and what would be in a published book. There would also be stories exclusive to that published book. So it's kind of working on that tiered approach. Here's free things you can get. Here's like a little better quality that you can actually pay for. And just because something has been published for free doesn't mean people aren't going to then buy it later. That's
Hmm.
actually how I got started publishing my own collections, as I had just been responding to writing prompts online. People really enjoyed them and they started sharing them around social media. And then when I edited my story to have a link of like, hey, I actually just built a collection. You can now go buy this collection. People were following the link and they were buying my first short story collection because they had read
Okay.
one of the things online. So, power of content marketing. And I think that works really well in terms of authors, right? Comedians do the same thing. If they want to encourage people to go see their full hour show, they'll have snippets online.
Hmm.
So musicians, same type of thing, right? You're releasing songs or your process and maybe a small, maybe a 1 minute version of it online for people to preview, and then you have the full song. So for authors, content marketing is actually providing samples of your work. It could be an excerpt if it's a full book, or it could be short stories, which is what I'm doing. I also feel like from my Substack point, I want to provide content to my subscribers that's more than just like my monthly update because I don't find that very interesting, right? There was a few authors where I'm on their mailing list as well, mainly because I wanted to see how they structured it. I don't
Uh-huh.
actually care for their monthly updates. I'm just like, okay. So I'm sure there are many people who feel the same way about me and they would much rather get something entertaining or useful rather than like, today I worked on this project.
Hmm.
So that was another reason for having the collection on Substack.
Okay. So it sounds like you have I mean, you keep stumbling upon this organic appeal. You post this and then people like it and they share it around and stuff like that. Do you have a sense, because I'm assuming even though you write fantasy and sci-fi, you must gravitate, do you gravitate towards certain themes? Do you find
So
that, or?
I gravitate to a lot of mythology, I find.
Okay. Okay.
So some of my stories that have done really well have been about fae, selkies. I had a story about Baba Yaga and witches that people enjoyed. I also find that less in terms of maybe like themes and concepts, a lot of the tone of my stories can be the sort of edge of bittersweet. So they're not like happy stories, but they're also not really dark stories. They kind of
Hmm.
tend to toe this middle line. Also, I think people like the fact that I will play with tropes. So I want to not just take a retelling of a myth, but I want to actually make it something new and something unique. For example, in the collection that I'm writing in my Substack, they're all retellings of Grimm's fairy tales set in Chicago because it's the city where I live in. And so I reimagined the house in Hansel and Gretel In a
Mhm.
similar way that I remember like Bloody Mary being a horror folktale when I was a child. So
Mhm.
Bloody Mary is this character where if you were to say like a phrase in the mirror, she's supposed to come and like pull out your clothes and all of this stuff. And so in the short story, I have the Hansel house. Actually, parents can then stare in a mirror and sort of say this little rhyme, and what will actually come is the Hansel house, the witch and Hansel and Gretel, to take their kids away.
So is the house located in a particular part of Chicago,
No, it
by any
floats
chance?
around. Yeah,
Or
so
it floats
it
around?
ends up
Okay.
following the children that it's been called to take. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
kind of what I mean by like a reimagining, though, because in the original myth,
Right.
it's the kids coming to the house. In this case, it's the house coming to the kids.
Wow, that's
And
yeah, that's interesting.
because I don't want necessarily things to be like really scary, it
Mhm.
does have a happy ending. The kids get what they want, and the parents get what they want, even though they're
Mhm.
different.
So how do you make it feel like it's in Chicago? Why would someone know that this is a story that takes place in Chicago versus anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, like an easy way to do it is just to mention the locations, right? Like there are very iconic sites and parts of Chicago that I then
Mhm.
am integrating into this. So I'm mentioning street corners, I'm mentioning particular parks. So in the case of the Hansel house, the children actually end up being like, there's a scene that takes place in the garden in front of the Art Institute. So people who are familiar with the city will understand, okay, this is where in the Chicago you are. In other stories in the collection, I keep mentioning things like the public transportation center, for example, how the L and the train systems work here in Chicago. So people,
Okay,
mhm,
okay, okay. I mean,
yeah.
I should tell you that I lived in Hyde Park for like, years. I lived in Oak Park for over 10 years, so I'm
Yeah.
pretty familiar with Chicago.
Yeah, there you go. So that's pretty much what I'm doing is I'm making important locations parts that are actually real in Chicago
Okay,
in the stories. I'm not just saying this is Chicago. They're actually interacting with the different elements that are here.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like Chicago also has, I mean, especially since I'm living in New York now, there's some real key distinctive attributes about your typical Chicagoan that you just don't see in other cities.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a grittiness, and I think that's what I'm leaning into in with the Grimm's
Mm,
fairy tales,
hmm.
because those stories are very, very gritty. As part of writing this collection, I've been reading the originals. And a
Hmm.
lot of them aren't very happy. They're meant to be lessons. And so, of course, there's some sort
Hmm.
of reckoning that happens in a lot of them. Sometimes I'm writing that, sometimes I'm not,
Okay.
because I am trying to make an effort to have more of a happy bent in my stories, I want to
Hmm.
say. I feel like,
Okay.
especially like last year and now moving into this world, the world and the news has been really harsh. So
Mm,
I've been trying to make sure that I can create something that isn't sinking into that and can be a little more uplifting, which means I'm sometimes going against my instinct, like with the Hansel house, for example. Like 3 years ago, if I had written that story, I would end it with the house catching up to the children, and then
hmm.
just that'd be it. You don't know what happens next. Whereas instead, when I was making sure to bring some levity into it, I wanted to actually then switch to the children's experience in the house and not make it a negative experience.
Hmm.
So, just as an example of ways to make things a little happier.
Right. So you're providing an escape from everything that people are sort of concerned about right now. That's what you're providing.
I'm hoping. So,
Yeah.
I hope
Okay.
I'm always working. And not all of the stories are happy, right? Like I do have a very my retelling of Rumpelstiltskin is very bittersweet,
Hmm.
where instead of asking her where what ends, it's actually between a hotel maid and this entity in Chicago that is
Hmm.
Rumpelstiltskin, that's actually her
Hmm.
missing husband. And so this is not a story where she can reunite with her missing husband, like she's been searching for him for 3 years. Chicago has kind of eaten and claimed him. She gets one last goodbye. That's what the story is, versus actually being able to reunite with him. But that one last goodbye is better than just never hearing from him again.
Wow.
So
Okay.
this is what I mean. Like I kind of ride that edge. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So you mentioned that since you are queer, you actually have a lot of queer characters. What's
Hmm.
important to you in terms of presenting a queer character? Like in terms of being either authentic or something that you think is significant and should be in there. Like what are some of the things that you think your queer characters would reflect that your straight characters wouldn't?
I
Or
think.
is there anything?
Oh yeah, well, I think it's just what you said before. Authenticity, I think, is very
Mm-hmm.
important to me. There are a
Mm-hmm.
variety of queer identities. I don't share all of them. So when I'm writing identities that aren't mine, I want to make sure that I'm presenting them accurately. I also want to make sure that when I'm talking about like queer identities and queer situations, there's two ways to approach it, and I feel like I flip flop depending on what mood I want to be in. There's the idea of like casual queerness. So you have queer characters in the story living peacefully because that's sort of a wish fulfillment. We want to just live our lives and have our own communities. And
Mm-hmm.
then in other cases, it is trying to be very authentic to the experiences that we have, which might include the struggles. So that is usually more fuller tales. Some people don't want to read and write those type of tales. I think they are important, especially when you're talking about books for younger queers, and I don't necessarily mean younger queers in terms of age. People can realize that they're queer at any part of their life, but navigating that can be very difficult, and I think media can provide a guidance. Books for teens, books for young adults, even older books or books with older characters, but people navigating what being queer means in the world in terms of relationships and relationships in terms of like a future partner, even family and friends, I think are important so people can have good representation of what life can be. So I tend to do a little bit of both. I don't think that's necessarily different than straight characters, by which I mean for straight characters, you're also going to want to have accurate representation to who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But the experiences of a straight person are just going to be different than the experiences of a queer person. You want to make sure that you don't have tokenism in both cases.
Have you ever seen in television or in a movie that's popular? Like in other words, a television show or a movie that people might be familiar with. Have you ever seen a portrayal of a queer character that you thought, okay, yeah, that's spot on?
Well, I saw a movie recently and now I'm blanking on the title, so please. There's a lot of queer media out there. Like there's a cult classic, But I'm a Cheerleader, which is actually I would say pretty good, about a girl who's accused of being a lesbian and so is sent to like sort of like a conversion summer camp program, and she's like, "But I can't be a lesbian. I'm a cheerleader." And it actually follows like her realization that yeah, she is a lesbian and her sort of ownership of that. I thought that was really well done. That's from the 80s. I do think that there. Go ahead.
Have you ever seen the incredibly true story of Two Girls in Love? Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
Yeah, the thing that's also from the 80s.
Okay.
It's been a long time since I saw that movie. And to be honest with you, the main thing I remember about that movie is the two girls in love. It's a white girl and a black girl. And the black girl is gorgeous. She is really attractive. And that's the main thing I remember about that movie. But that's one. And then there was another one that was shot in Chicago called something like The L Game or The L something.
I don't know that one. There are a lot of things that are filmed in Chicago too.
Yeah, the thing about that one is, for me personally, it involved a lot of the scenes took place kind of on the north side near there was a bookstore that was really popular when I was there, and now it's been so long I can't remember the name of the bookstore. But
On the other side, I mean, like open books, volumes, Wormhole. I think it was Wormhole that actually had like a model of the DeLorean in the bookstore. It was pretty cool.
okay, where's Wormhole located?
I
What part of
thought,
the city?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if Wormhole was the bookstore or the coffee shop, but the Wicker Park area.
Wicker Park. Okay. Yeah, I mean, actually, this bookstore was just north of, it was kind of, I'm trying to remember, I believe it was on Belmont. And it wasn't so far north that you're almost to Evanston. It wasn't that far north.
Okay.
It was kind of right before you get to the part of Chicago, and I did this. This is a while back, so this is like the 20 teens that I'm talking about. But
Okay.
this is right before you get to the part of Chicago that becomes extremely diverse. I mean, because you know how Chicago has all these ethnic neighborhoods all over the
Hmm.
place. So there's Little Village, there's Logan Square.
Yeah.
And my understanding is a lot of these some of these neighborhoods have been gentrified to some extent. But
Yeah.
when you start getting closer to Evanston, you get into, communities that originated from parts of Africa, parts of South America that are not like the ones that come to mind immediately. So it's not that far north, but it's been a while. It's been a while. But yeah, I distinctly remember the incredibly true story of Two Girls in Love. Yeah, that was an interesting movie, and I believe it was the L Game was the other one.
Okay.
The first movie involves the whole idea is these girls were supposed to be teenagers. I believe they were in high school, but of course the actors were, in their early 20s. And the other one was more about people who were already more established in their jobs and stuff. So I seem to remember the characters being in their 30s and maybe even early 40s. So yeah, I was just curious about that because I mean the other thing I was thinking of is what was the name of that? It was a sci-fi series out of Canada. I think is something black
I mean, Black Mirror.
because it was the series that was about these clones. And so one actor played all the clones, and one of the clones was queer. And she wound up being involved with like one of the women who was kind of worked on that was part of the team that created the clones.
Interesting. I don't think I know that one, but in terms of maybe more popular shows that people might know, like Doctor Who, like the
Okay.
Doctor is actually queer. So
Really?
yes,
Okay.
they make it a lot more explicit in later seasons, I would say, with later
Uh,
doctors. He
uh,
is not on screen queer. So
Okay.
no, I take that back. He is in the most recent season. He has a on-camera relationship with a man, but it has mentioned many times in just conversation and dialogue that he's had relationships with men, women, trans folk.
Okay.
So that would be either they've never outright necessarily identified the doctor as either bisexual or pansexual, however they would want to do that. He would be considered a queer character at this point, but it's not very overt in the
Mm-hmm.
show, which is
Mm-hmm.
to your like original question of like, would I consider that like a good example? No.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like a lot of big popular media, that's the type of representation that you get there. A lot of good queer stories I find are actually limited to books. And that might
Mm-hmm.
be just because as an author, I do a lot more reading or shows. But in many
Yeah.
cases, queer shows tend to be labeled queer shows. And so they might not get huge followings.
Yeah, I mean the reason why I asked the question about movies and television shows is because I was thinking more in terms of portrayals of black characters. And that's how I sort of relate to the challenge
Hmm.
because I mean there's African American literature which I'm willing to bet from the perspective of a lot of black writers is really just a way to kind of market their books.
It can be, yes.
And like I have black characters in my writing, but I usually have an extremely diverse cast of characters, and it's not written, and I don't feel like I'm writing from a black perspective, that sort of thing. So I was just kind of curious, because I'm not really interested in books that are with the sole purpose of trying to get the reader to understand the quote unquote black experience, because I mean it's pretty broad actually.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie American Fiction?
No, I haven't
So
seen
it's
that movie.
so it's about a black author who is actually runs in the literary space, and he's getting very frustrated because he considers himself like an avant author, very literary, and he cannot sell a book. And so he decides in a whim to write, in his opinion, a very, very bad book that really is all of the stereotypes of like black literature, right? Like gang life and this and that. And he hates how well it does. It does so successfully. He wins all of these rewards and he does it under a pen name. And so it's this really big struggle for him about like, okay, like how my culture is being reduced and yet consumed, and this is what people want, can turn to the actual real literature that he feels like he can write and has that
Hmm.
power to do. There's a lot of that sort of tension that's happening in the movie. And I feel like sometimes you will also see that sort of same tension within queer stories. A lot of times I will feel tension of like, I need to write queer stories because I am a queer author, but sometimes my characters are straight, and like that's just who they
Hmm.
are. So, and there's also that idea of like if you market something as a queer book versus a book around the themes that you have in it, I think is also a common tension point that a lot of I think any creator really feels.
That movie, by the way, was based on the novel Erasure, which I
Really? I didn't realize it was
loved.
based off of a novel.
I
Okay.
love that novel. And believe it or not, in that novel, what the author does is he acts, and I don't know if it's the name of the movie. The name of the the bad novel in Erasure is fuck. That's
Same thing. They kept that in the
same
movie.
thing.
Yeah, they did. They did. Yeah. Yeah.
What he actually does, Percival Everett does in that novel, is he actually has the bad novel in the novel.
Really?
Is one of the is an example of why I prefer listening to audiobooks with regard to some novels, because I just fast forwarded past the novel because it is terrible. It is it's the thing about Erasure that surprised, that I was fascinated by, at least, is it's really making fun of the publishing industry. That's what Erasure is doing. I don't know about the movie, but that's what
Uh,
the
I feel like
novel
the
is doing.
movie is less focused on the publishing industry and more about the author character. Because
Okay.
in the movie, it's portrayed like the idea of like changing the title of the book to fuck, right? Is he presents that because he's like, there's no way they're gonna do this, right? Like he's trying to kill this book
Right,
essentially
right.
because he's crazy, and that's gone so well. And then the publishing industry just caves, right? They're like, yeah, we'll do it. It's vulgar, but like sure. And it's to me, it felt less of a critique on the publishing industry and actually more of a critique on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this misconceived public understanding of Black culture, right? Because the publishing industry is only acting this way because they believe that the American consumer base is going to consume this type of book. And they think that this would add authenticity to that
Well, there's an element of
experience.
that in there, because the other thing that he does that I appreciated, as a Black man, is one thing that he does is he shows that what you might you can justifiably describe something as Black exploitation, fiction or whatever, but a lot of Black people like it. So in the novel, like the book that gives him the inspiration to write, this bad novel, is a book that's written by a woman, Wheeze Bees from the Ghetto. And I don't know if that's
Okay.
the title in the movie, but I mean, that's just, to me, that's the funniest title. So and so he actually meets these Black people. He dates a woman, a Black woman, who,
Yes.
like, she has it on her nightstand. And it becomes this thing that, like, he's like, the relationship seems to be going well until he sees that book on her nightstand, and it like
Yep.
changes his whole perception of her and stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought that was very insightful in a way, is that, like, is wrong to assume that it's only a white misperception of Black people, sort of thing. I mean, it's wrong to assume that. It's way more nuanced than that. The reason why I
Hmm.
say that he was making fun of the publishing industry, and I would love to get your take on how this was portrayed in the movie, is he keeps telling his literary agent, "I don't want to meet the publisher." And they're like, "Well, they won't sign the book unless they insist on meeting you." And then when he meets the guy and there's a woman with him, it turns, in the novel, it's really clear that the guy almost wants to meet him because he wants to see if he's authentic, because the author of this crazy novel is supposedly writing it from his personal experience. So he's a
Yes.
gangster, and he's thuggish and all this kind of stuff. And they want to meet the thug.
Yeah. They still do that. So there's scenes where like he's doing a TV interview, I believe, and they just have his like his silhouette
Right, right,
on
right.
a TV screen. They're dresses thuggish to meet people. And at one
Uh-huh.
point when I think there was talks for a movie too, and he's trying to meet the director who is trying to like make sure that he's real. Like he can't quite keep character the entire time because it feels so weird for him. Like,
Hmm.
but yeah, all of that is still in the movie. I thought it was very well done. I rented it from the library 2 years ago now, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, so I did highly enjoy it.
Okay, okay. I mean, we went on this tangent about this, about this, but I mean, it is an interesting question because you don't really see a lot of authentic portrayals of queer characters in a lot of different places. And the few times you do see a queer character, if it becomes popular, then it almost becomes sort of a glamorized version of that. I mean, the example that comes to mind for me is Will and Grace, right?
I am a little too young for Will and Grace. Never.
Okay.
No, but that is like but that's a notable example, right? Because I think that's on record of being the first gay kiss on public television.
Oh, it's credited for the legalization of gay marriage.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
people totally assume that that's the reason why it's legal.
yeah. There is a lot of good portrayals out there. In many cases, I feel like it is where a queer character though is part of a bigger ensemble
Hmm.
versus something that's strictly focused on them. There are movies that, again, and for some reason, I keep thinking of older movies. Like the other one was starred Patrick Swayze as a drag queen with Love from Mufang, maybe.
Mm, okay.
So that was a very well done movie. And I'm now trying to think of like most recent movies that I've seen, and a lot of them are like the Marvel superhero stuff, and there's not a whole lot of representation there.
Hmm.
Or what else have I watched recently? A lot of the, like, animated Batman movies. There's also not a whole lot of, like, queer rep there. So right. So there's different types of rep there than queer rep, I would say. It's a lot more obvious in comics and books. And I do feel like something that's just a natural part of media and representation development is a lot of rep tends to start in small indie places because it's
Hmm.
people within the community who are looking to showcase their experiences and their feelings. And eventually, if things end up being like indie successes and there tends to be a market for this, then it sort of gets expanded
Hmm.
into greater things. An
Right.
example might be Nimona, which started off as like a small little graphic novel and then really started to gain popularity and became a Netflix movie that won awards for animation,
Wow.
and which stars a a shapeshifter villain's assistant who is very coded as a trans character. So
Okay.
because they can change
Okay.
their form all over the time, they don't really have preferred pronouns,
Hmm.
but that was something that started very small and then just kind of blew up. And that creator has developed lots of queer media at this point that has also done really well. They were
Hmm.
the headrunner for the Netflix She-Ra TV show,
Hmm.
which is very, very queer. At one point, they defeat the bad guys with rainbows. So, like, okay,
When you
got it.
said very clear, I was just like, well, what could you possibly mean by that? But
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I
Like,
see
and
now.
pretty much every relationship is. I think there's one seemingly straight relationship, and I say that
Hmm.
because it's very possible that those characters might be bi or pan. We just only see
Hmm.
them interested in each other.
Hmm.
So, but like everyone else is in some sort of poly or queer relationship.
By the way, the sci-fi series that I mentioned earlier, the title is Orphan Black.
Oh,
Have you ever
Orphan
heard
Black.
of?
Okay, I have heard of that. I have not seen it, but I have heard good things.
Well, it was, I mean, just Tatiana, I forget her last name, and she's married now, so she may not even have the same last name, but her performance was really impressive. I mean, because each clone was very distinct, and I mean, to an extreme extent. So the one clone who was queer, she actually was also a scientist, and I guess that's the reason why they were able to connect her with another scientist who worked in the lab that developed the clones. But there was also another clone who was an assassin and she was just completely different. I mean, it was hard to even really get a sense of what her sexual orientation actually was because the thing that she was really into was killing people.
That's fair. And I've always found that to be, like, a sign of how good an actor is, if they could
Mm,
play different versions of the same character.
yeah.
I noticed that with, I don't remember the actress's name, but in Buffy, Willow ends up having an evil villain arc. And so the actor goes from playing this really lovable, happy best friend character into someone who
Hmm.
gets deeper and deeper into magic and goes towards a villain field. So, but seeing someone able to play those two sides, I think is always impressive.
Now, are you familiar with the novel Dreadnought? Have you ever heard of that novel?
I've heard of it, have not read it.
Okay. Because Dreadnought is was fascinating to me in the sense that it was written by a woman. The novel is about a teen who is transgender but cannot come out, his father's a jerk and the mother is basically a what's the term? Like when you just sort of support the jerk.
Enabler, maybe?
Yeah, an enabler, and her whole thing is just, you just don't want to make your father angry kind of thing. So Dreadnought opens the opening scene in Dreadnought is the character is in the parking lot behind a mall doing their nails because it's they, them, right?
Hmm.
And so the character is behind the mall doing their nails and the Dreadnought that passes the power on to them crashes to the ground right there next to them. And so, Dreadnought is kind of like Green Lantern. It's the power comes from this thing that you pass on to another person. And everybody knows that. I mean, in this world, superheroes exist. Everybody knows, what Dreadnought is about. And so Dreadnought is about to die. So Dreadnought passes that on to this character. And what's fascinating to me about that novel is the author makes a big deal about how the main thing that the character gets from the transformation is going from being anatomically male to anatomically female. And that's the way she handles it.
Okay.
And I always wondered because that novel, the reviews are pretty good. And, like on Goodreads, I think it's like 4.2 or something like that.
Okay.
And stuff. So, I mean, there's definitely an audience for that. That's why I was curious as to whether you read it and what your thoughts were on that novel.
I have not. I'm also not a trans woman, so I wouldn't be able to
Right,
speak
right, right.
to that
Yeah.
experience.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, but I feel like, to like some of our earlier points, books like that, I feel like sometimes people read it for the curiosity, right?
Hmm.
This is experience that I don't know much about. Let me
Hmm.
read a good portrayal so I can kind of understand? Some people are looking to see themselves in it. Some people might just like superhero literature.
Right,
Oh,
right, right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But on the, I mean, is the case with a lot of novels that I'm talking about. I listened to the audiobook version, and to me, in terms of superhero literature, it was kind of lacking because the fight scenes weren't that great.
fascinating. I feel like that's like the reason why you watch, especially like superhero movies, right? Is because of the fight
Hmm.
scenes.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, exactly. But then again, I mean, the fight scenes aren't really that great in Ready Player One either because it's all telling. So,
Yeah, I remember liking the book more than the movie, but also not thinking both were stellar. And I
mm,
tried to read his second book, Armada, and I don't even think I finished it, honestly.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about books. You said that you haven't been on TikTok for a year because of Ellison's ownership, and obviously they're mining your data. I mean, it's so obvious now. So, one, are you familiar with Upscrolled? Which has been sort of lately has been put out there as the TikTok alternative, although is very different from TikTok. I mean, I'm on Upscrolled. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I will admit when I left TikTok, I didn't really replace it with a different video app. I just
I
put
got
more
you.
time into Instagram. And then like
Okay.
when Twitter also went off the rails, I joined Blue Sky.
Okay.
And that's about it. So I really just am on, I guess, primarily three places now: Instagram, Substack, and Tumblr. But I have been on Tumblr.
Tumblr.
Yeah, I've been there since like 2012, 2014.
Really?
And that's the one that I've actually seen has the greatest impact on my sales because
Tumblr?
it's a text-based platform. And so that's where when I'm sharing these short stories and when I'm doing those prompts that I mentioned before that then led to sales,
Mhm.
that was a Tumblr post because there's a writing community there where you're sharing prompts and you could build off of it. There's communal writing that's happening. There's like on Instagram, right? Like you have a small little square or like a little video. You can't display text and you're writing very accurately there
And
versus
you
a
can't link
text-based
from
platform.
you can't link from Instagram either. That's the thing that
You
irritates me.
can. Like every time I have a new Substack post or a new story that I publish there, I can put a link in my Instagram story or reel. I can't put it in the actual like feed post.
That's interesting that you say that because on Substack, I've noticed, like, you know how you can go to stats and then you look at traffic and it'll
Mhm.
tell you
Yep.
where people are coming to you from? And I was surprised to see Instagram because all I have in my Instagram posts is I've copied and pasted the link to the Substack, whatever content I have on Substack. I've copied and pasted that in like the text area. So you have
Mm.
to actually copy and paste it into a browser and that wouldn't show up as coming from Instagram. So I guess I have what's the term? Like reposted my content from Substack to Instagram in Reels, and so I guess that's the reason why I have some
Yeah,
traffic
Reels
from
allows you to
Instagram.
have links in there. But Tumblr, like I said, you could also have links, and Tumblr can also kind of work as like you could have hyperlinked things. So it's not uncommon where I might have a post about like here's like for example my collection right for Chicago's Grim, where I could be like okay
Hmm.
here's a master post and here's a link to each story that you can now go and read. I
Oh,
can have posts like that on Tumblr that I cannot have in other places.
I'm glad you
Instagram
said that.
doesn't really support that. Substack would support that,
Hmm.
but I feel like there's more people on Tumblr than there are Substack. At least in terms of readers, I feel like I get a lot more organic engagement in Tumblr than I do actually in a lot of other social media places. It might be
Wow, I'm
because
glad
I've
you.
been there so long, right? And so I've
Okay.
sort of built up an audience here. So I tend to share a lot of you could do long form mini blogs on Tumblr because it was originally a blogging platform.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, I used to be on Tumblr. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
and I kind of, I'm glad you mentioned that because I've fallen away from Tumblr because I didn't see any utility in it. So, but I want to give you an opportunity. Is there something that you want to like, plug right now or something that's coming up that you'd like people to know about or?
I was gonna say, like, please go ahead and follow me on Substack, and you can get those free stories as they're coming out in Chicago's Grim. So it's roughly a new story every month, and so it's a retelling
Hmm.
of a Grimm's fairy tale set in modern day Chicago.
Okay.
In terms of future projects, I am working on a nonfiction book on how to self-publish, focused on what tools you could use for free, and then how you can
Hmm.
start to scale up your author business as you're starting to bring in more income, where you can invest and where you can hold off on investing,
When do you
versus the
think,
actual
when do you,
process of it.
when do you
Go
think
ahead.
that'll be done?
So my goal is to have that to beta readers in April.
April. Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Well,
to my beta readers and then probably publish in late May, early June.
and you're going to self-publish it? You're going to do it yourself or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Most of my titles at this point I self-pub or I go through a small press.
Okay.
So this will be not a full-length book. It'll probably be about 30,000 words. So that would be hard to find a publisher for, but very easy for me
Right.
to put online.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I-
Totally fine.